The thing about diplomatic missions on backwater planets is that they tend to attract the kind of beings who believe their own propaganda. Take the Zephyrian embassy on Kepler 442b, for instance, a crystalline monument to architectural pretension that jutted from the planet's surface like a middle finger aimed at good taste. Inside its gleaming halls, 3 of the galaxy's most militaristic species had gathered to negotiate what historians would later call the most spectacularly miscalculated peace summit in recorded galactic history. Not that anyone knew that yet. Ambassador Vexthala preened his iridescent feathers as he surveyed the negotiation chamber, satisfaction radiating from every perfectly groomed plume. The Zephyrian had spent the better part of 2 standard years orchestrating this moment, bringing together the perpetually warring hegemony and syndicate factions to finally hash out their territorial disputes. Of course, the recent addition of a 4th party had complicated matters somewhat. Humans. The galaxy's newest players, and according to most civilized species, its most bewildering. They'd appeared seemingly overnight in galactic terms, which was to say within the last 50 standard years, a mere blink of an eye to species that measured their histories in millennia. Most established civilizations had initially dismissed them as another primitive backwater species that would either destroy itself or be absorbed by one of the major powers. The fact that neither had occurred was, frankly, becoming somewhat irritating. The human delegation should arrive momentarily, Vexthala announced to the assembled representatives, his voice carrying that particular blend of condescension and forced diplomacy that made career ambassadors so universally beloved. I trust we can conduct ourselves with appropriate decorum. General Crix of the hegemony shifted his segmented bulk in his specially reinforced chair, compound eyes glittering with barely contained aggression. The insectoid's chitinous exoskeleton bore the scars of countless battles, each mark a testament to the hegemony's philosophy that might made right. Decorum, he clicked dismissively, mandibles working in what passed for a sneer among his kind. These mammals barely qualify as sentient. What could they possibly contribute to serious military discussions? Admiral Tilana said nothing, but the slight ripple of her aquatic breathing apparatus suggested amusement. The syndicate representative had observed these proceedings with the calculating patience of a predator, her translucent skin shifting through subtle color changes that conveyed meanings lost on most air-breathing species. Where Crix favored blunt force, Tilana preferred surgical precision, a philosophy that had served the syndicate well in their centuries-long conflict with the hegemony. The chamber's main entrance dilated with a soft whisper of advanced engineering, and the human delegation entered. Or rather, the human delegate entered. Singular. Captain Kowalski walked into the room with the easy stride of someone completely unimpressed by crystalline architecture and alien posturing. She stood perhaps average height for her species, which put her somewhere between the towering Crix and the more diminutive Tilana, but carried herself with a confidence that seemed almost casual. Her uniform was practical military dress, clean but obviously worn, bearing insignia that meant nothing to the assembled aliens but somehow conveyed authority anyway. Vexthala's carefully prepared welcome speech died in his throat. That is, we were expecting a full diplomatic corps. Kowalski glanced around the chamber with mild interest, taking in the elaborate seating arrangements, the ceremonial weapons displays, and the general air of species trying very hard to impress each other. Were you? That seems inefficient. She pulled out a standard folding chair from somewhere. The aliens would later debate where exactly she'd been hiding it, and set it down with a metallic scrape that somehow managed to sound dismissive. Inefficient. Vexthala's feathers ruffled slightly. This is a formal peace negotiation between 3 of the galaxy's most significant military powers. 4. Kowalski corrected mildly, settling into her chair with the air of someone getting comfortable for a long wait. Unless you're not counting us, which would be interesting. The word interesting hung in the air, like a live grenade with the pin pulled. Crix leaned forward, his bulk creaking against his chair's reinforcements. Humans have been spacefaring for what, half a century? The hegemony has waged successful campaigns across 17 sectors. Our military achievements span millennia. Good for you, Kowalski replied with genuine-sounding warmth that somehow managed to be more insulting than open mockery. Tilana's skin shifted to a pale blue, curiosity mixed with caution. Perhaps we should establish our respective credentials before proceeding. It would help, Contextualize our negotiations. Vex Thala seized on this diplomatic lifeline with visible relief. Excellent suggestion, Admiral. I have personally overseen 14 successful peace accords and... Nobody cares about your peace accords, Crix interrupted with characteristic hegemony tact. Military strength determines negotiating position. I have led forces in 37 planetary campaigns, personally eliminated over 2,000 enemy combatants, and conquered systems spanning 4 parsecs. The general's compound eyes fixed on Kowalski with predatory interest. And you, human? What grand military achievements does your species claim? Kowalski considered this question with the thoughtful expression of someone trying to remember where they'd left their keys. The silence stretched just long enough to become uncomfortable before she spoke. I'm sorry, could you be more specific? Crix's mandibles clicked impatiently. Your kill count, Captain. Your combat experience. Surely even your primitive military keeps basic records. Oh. Kowalski's face lit up with understanding, and she tilted her head slightly, a gesture that would later be described by survivors as deceptively innocent. This year or just this planet? The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Vex Thala's preening stopped mid-stroke. Tilana's color shift ceased entirely, leaving her a pale, alarmed white. Crix's clicking mandibles fell silent as his compound eyes tried to process what he'd just heard. What? The general managed. Kowalski looked genuinely puzzled by their reaction. Well, you asked about my kill count, but you weren't very specific. Are we talking about this calendar year? Because it's only been 7 months, so the numbers are a bit low. Or did you mean just here on Kepler 442b? Because I only arrived yesterday, so that would be 0 unless you count the landing approach, but those were mostly automated defenses, so I'm not sure they count as proper kills. Though I suppose. Wait, Tilana interrupted, her voice carefully controlled. When you say this year. Standard Terran year, Kowalski clarified helpfully. January through July. Though if you want to get technical, I was on leave for 3 weeks in April. So really it's more like 6.5 months of active duty. The numbers are definitely on the low side. The 3 alien representatives exchanged glances that conveyed the same message in 3 different languages. What have we gotten ourselves into? Vex Thala cleared his throat with a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane. Perhaps you could provide some context. For clarity. Sure. Kowalski's cheerful cooperation was somehow more terrifying than any threat. So this year I've been primarily involved in what Command calls diplomatic missions. The Altair incident in February, that was about 40,000, but most of those were automated systems, so again, I'm not sure they count. Then there was the Vega situation in March, which was more like traditional combat. Maybe 15,000, give or take. She paused, apparently doing mental math. The Centauri thing in May was tricky because it was mostly orbital, and you know how hard it is to get accurate counts on ship-to-ship combat. Probably around 60,000, but that's including crew estimates for the dreadnoughts. June was quiet, just some police action in the Tau Ceti system. Maybe 3,000. And July's just getting started, obviously. The silence that followed was a kind typically reserved for moments when entire civilizations realize they've made a catastrophic error in judgment. General Crix found his voice first, though it came out as more of a whispered click. Those are casualty figures for entire campaigns. Well, yes, Kowalski agreed. Though like I said, this year's been pretty quiet. Last year was busier. We had the whole expansion into the Perseus Arm, plus those anti-piracy operations in the Outer Rim. That was a good year for numbers. Admiral Tilana's skin had gone completely transparent, revealing the rapid pulse of whatever passed for her cardiovascular system. Anti-piracy operations. Oh, you know how it is, Kowalski waved dismissively. Pirates, slavers, the occasional warlord who thinks he's built himself a proper empire. Standard peacekeeping stuff. Though I suppose peacekeeping is relative, it's very peaceful afterward. The captain seemed to notice their stricken expressions for the first time and looked concerned. Is everything all right? You all look a bit pale. Well, paler. Admiral Tilana, you look like you're about to molt. These diplomatic missions, Vex Thala managed, his voice barely above a whisper. What exactly? Mostly first contact scenarios gone wrong, Kowalski explained with a casual air of someone discussing the weather. You'd be surprised how often newly discovered species turn out to be hostile, or enslaving their neighbors, or practicing ritual cannibalism on a planetary scale. Really makes you appreciate civilized company like this. She gestured around the table at three representatives who were rapidly reassessing every assumption they'd ever made about human capabilities. The thing is, Kowalski continued, warming to her subject, most species seem to think that being new to the galactic community means we're pushovers. They see our little ships and our primitive technology and figure we're easy prey. It's honestly kind of flattering how many civilizations have tried to conquer us this year alone. How many? Tilana whispered. Oh, dozens. Though most of them don't last long enough for proper counting. There was this one species, the Modaki, I think, who sent this adorable little invasion fleet. 12 dreadnoughts, very impressive. They showed up in the Sol system, making all sorts of demands about tribute and submission. Command actually let them finish their whole speech before responding. She chuckled at the memory. Poor things never even saw the defense platforms decloak. The whole engagement lasted maybe 4 minutes. Very polite, very efficient. We sent their survivors home with a fruit basket and a strongly worded letter about proper diplomatic protocols. Crix's mandibles were working frantically, but no sound emerged. His military mind was trying to process the implications of human defense platforms that could eliminate a 12-dreadnought fleet in 4 minutes, and finding the results unpalatable. Of course, Kowalski added thoughtfully, that was back when we were trying to be nice about it. Command's gotten a bit more direct in recent months. The three aliens looked like they were witnessing their own funeral arrangements being made. Direct. Vex Thala croaked. Well, word got around about the whole humans are easy targets thing, and frankly it was getting disruptive. Hard to establish proper trade relations when every other week some two-bit empire is showing up with conquest fleets. So Command decided to be more proactive. She pulled out a small device that looked suspiciously like a military communicator. Speaking of which, I should probably check in. The pickup crew gets worried if I don't report in on schedule. Pickup crew? Tilana asked faintly. Oh yes, didn't I mention? I'm just here temporarily. The 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit is passing through the system on their way to the Andromeda Galaxy. Some kind of mapping mission, I think, and they are picking me up after this meeting. Should be here any minute, actually. As if summoned by her words, the chamber's main display activated, showing the external view of Kepler 442b's orbital space. What they saw there would later be described in military reports as a concerning concentration of human naval assets. Ships, hundreds of them, sleek, predatory vessels that had somehow appeared in the system without triggering a single long-range sensor. They hung in space like a constellation of barely contained violence, their presence rewriting every tactical assessment the three species had ever made about human capabilities. Ah, there they are, Kowalski said cheerfully, checking her communicator. Right on time. The Admiral says hello, by the way. He wanted to come down personally, but apparently there's some kind of situation developing in the Magellanic clouds that needs attention. She stood up, folding her chair with brisk efficiency. So, about this peace treaty, I assume you three can work out the details without much input from me? Humans generally prefer that everyone stops shooting at everyone else approach to negotiations. Very straightforward. The three alien representatives nodded with the enthusiasm of beings who had just realized they were sitting in a room with someone who casually discussed planetary scale casualties like weather patterns. Excellent. Kowalski beamed at them with genuine warmth. I'll let Command know you're all reasonable beings who appreciate diplomatic solutions. They'll be so pleased. Saves everyone a lot of paperwork. She paused at the chamber entrance, looking back with what might have been sympathy. Oh, and gentlemen, lady, if you're ever in the Sol system, do give us advance notice. Our automated defenses can be a bit enthusiastic about unannounced visitors. We're working on that. The door dilated shut behind her with a soft whisper, leaving three of the galaxy's most feared military leaders alone with their rapidly crumbling worldviews. It was General Crix who broke the silence, his voice carrying the hollow tone of someone reassessing their entire military doctrine. She tilted her head. Like she was confused by the question, Tilana added, her skin cycling through colors that indicated deep existential distress. Ambassador Vexthala stared at the closed door for a long moment before turning to the peace treaty documents with newfound urgency. I suggest we sign these immediately. All of them, Crix agreed, his mandibles clicking in what might have been nervous laughter. Every single clause. No modifications. Should we add anything about mutual defense? Tilana asked hopefully. Maybe some kind of friendship pacts. Within the hour, the most comprehensive peace treaty in galactic history had been signed, ratified, and transmitted to all three homeworlds with urgent priority flags. The three species that had been locked in bitter warfare for centuries suddenly found themselves united by a common realization. There were apparently much more important things to worry about than their petty territorial disputes. As Captain Kowalski's transport lifted off from the embassy landing pad, its departure vector aimed toward the constellation of human warships hanging in orbit like sleeping predators. The three ambassadors watched from the observation deck with the shell-shocked expressions of beings who had just discovered they were very small fish in a much larger pond. You know, Vexthala said quietly, his usually pristine feathers somewhat ruffled, I'm beginning to think we may have misunderstood the nature of human diplomacy. She called this year quiet, Crix observed, his compound eyes fixed on the departing ships. She said last year was busier. Admiral Tilana's skin had settled into a deep purple that indicated profound contemplation mixed with existential dread. Do you think she was exaggerating? The question hung in the air, like an undetonated warhead as the human fleet began to move, their sleek forms disappearing into hyperspace with an efficiency that suggested they had places to be and things to diplomatically resolve. Back on Ith, in a briefing room buried beneath the Pentagon, Fleet Admiral Chen reviewed the mission report with the kind of satisfaction that came from a job well done. The Kepler 442b situation had been resolved with typical human efficiency, no shots fired, no casualties, and best of all, minimal paperwork. How did Kowalski handle the negotiations? Asked General Morrison, looking up from his own stack of reports detailing similar diplomatic missions across 17 different sectors. Like a professional, Chen replied with a slight smile, though she did mention that the aliens seemed surprised by her casualty figures. They always are, Morrison chuckled. You'd think word would get around by now. Oh, it is, Chen assured him, pulling up a holographic display showing the rapidly shifting political landscape of the local galactic arm. Intelligence reports indicate that at least 47 different species have suddenly developed an interest in peaceful coexistence with their neighbors. The display showed trade routes opening, territorial disputes being settled through arbitration rather than warfare, and a general trend toward what xenopolitical analysts were calling aggressive pacification. The Kowalski effect, Morrison nodded approvingly. One confused head tilt, and suddenly everyone wants to be friends. Outside the Pentagon, Earth continued its quiet rotation around an unremarkable yellow star, its inhabitants going about their daily lives largely unaware that their species had somehow become the galaxy's most effective peacekeepers simply by being themselves. Humans, it turned out, had a remarkable talent for asking the right questions at the wrong time and for answering simple questions in ways that fundamentally altered interstellar politics. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, Captain Zara Kowalski settled into her transport seat, pulled out a dog-eared paperback novel, and began reading, blissfully unaware that her innocent request for clarification had just reshaped the balance of power in three-star systems. After all, she'd only been doing her job. The fact that her job happened to involve the kind of casualty figures that made entire civilizations reconsider their life choices was hardly her fault. It was, as the saying went, all about perspective. And from a human perspective, this year really had been pretty quiet.